morning. We're so glad that you are joining us. It is the 10th of January, and for most of us, this new year has started. I trust that it's been a good time and that you've been sensing God's favor and His leading. I want to remind you that we are finishing our series today, series called Exit and Entry. And the key thought there is that the way that we exited 2020 is the way that we will enter 2021. And seeing that it is already the start of the year and we are in the year, we won't look so much back at the exit, but I want to encourage you to be very careful at how you watch. And that's the topic for this morning. It's a word that has a number of meanings, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I want to start by saying that we should watch what we watch. Watch what you watch. Be very careful where your eyes are. And maybe as you exited 2020, maybe your eyes and your focus and what you listened to and where you got your information from might have been in the wrong place. This is the ideal time at the beginning of the year to make sure that your eyes are at the right place. Why is this so important? There's a beautiful scripture in Psalm 101. I'm reading from the Passion Translation, verse 3. It says, I refuse to gaze on that which is vulgar. I despise works of evil people and anyone that moves my heart or anything that moves my heart away from you. I will not let evil hold me in its grip. The writer starts by talking about what he looks at, but he very quickly makes the connection that what we look at has an impact on where our heart is and how we can be led astray by that. And evil can get a grip on us. So I want to encourage you to really take stock at the beginning of this year and ask yourself the question, what are you watching? Where is your focus? Where are you getting information from? Who are you listening to? What are your sources of input that is coming towards you? Because that will drastically affect how you will manage this year. The other part of that, watching what you watch, is a saying that I want to say in this way, that we will become what we worship, or we will end up the same thing or the same way as the thing that we are looking at or giving our attention to. And again in the Psalms 135 we read, the idols of the nations are silver and gold made by human hands. They have mouths, but they cannot speak, eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear, nor is there breath in their mouths. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. The writer here says that anyone who makes an idol will eventually become like that idol. And we need to be very careful what we give our attention to, what we look at. And a very simple way of putting it is, if I am giving my attention, if I'm giving my focus, if I am looking at something negative, I will become negative. But if I have my focus on something positive, I will become positive. And in this regard, the key remains to stay focused on God, on His Word, and to spend time with Him. And if we do that, this year will be fine. We will manage. We will get through. God will carry us during this year. But if we, at the beginning of this year, allow our attention to shift, and we allow negativity to creep in, and we listen to negative people, or we watch negative reports, we will become like that. Because that which we worship is what we will ultimately become. And the positive of that would be that if we worship God, if we fix our eyes on Him, we will become like Him. We will be transformed into His image. We will look more and more like Him. Second thing on a practical level that I want to look at is I want to encourage you to watch the watch loop. Watch the watch loop. And the picture I have there is of a dog chasing its own tail and eventually catching his own tail. And it's so easy it can happen that if we find ourselves looking at something negative and we begin to venture into that direction, that we begin to find other negative things. And it's almost if this thing becomes a loop and it feeds upon itself. And the more I focus on these negative things, the more I watch that, the more it will feed back into my life. But the other thing is also true, the positive side of that. The more I focus on God, the more I let my eyes go to that direction, give my ears attention to that, the more that would feed in a positive way. If you do a bit of a study and you look at all the social media platforms, this is a key part of how they function. This watch loop. And in most social media platforms, there is an algorithm that wants to try and find out who you are, what you like to see. And if you begin to follow a certain direction, it will begin to give you more and more information. It will feed you more from that side. And eventually, you will get nothing of the other side. It's almost like a feedback loop. You end up being like a dog chasing its own tail. How many of you, when you maybe have bought a new car, as soon as you get onto the road, it's as if everyone else is driving that car. It's not that the numbers have changed, but it's simply that your focus and your attention is suddenly on this car that you are driving. And suddenly you are noticing all the other cars that are of the similar make and model. It's again, watch what you watch. There is a loop that you can get trapped in. So 2 practical things to start off with. Just pay attention to what you are watching. And it's an ideal time of the year to take inventory of that and make decisions regarding that. So let's get back to watch and 2 meanings of the word. The one is what we would just see. I watch, I look at something. So to look at or to observe attentively over a period of time. So when I watch something, I'm simply looking at it. And the second meaning is to exercise care, caution, or restraint about something. So that's almost a watchman, a security guard. A security guard keeps watch, and he looks out for any danger. So the one is just the normal looking, what I'm doing with my eyes. And the other one is an intent to keep danger away from us. And I want to highlight 3 points this morning when we look at this topic of watch. And as we enter this new year, what we can be asking God and what we can give attention to during this time. And the first point is, it is time. If you have not realized this yet, we are living in incredibly, I don't know if interesting is an accurate word, challenging times. There are many questions that we are faced with, many challenges that we are faced with. And what are we doing in this time? Where are we looking? What are we giving our attention and our focus to? In the book of Matthew, we read the passage where Jesus teaches about the 10 virgins and the oil lamps that run out. And you all know that story very well. And at the end of the story, certain people are allowed entry, and others whose oil had run out were not allowed entry. Jesus ends that passage in verse 13 by saying, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour." I want to ask you this question. Is it possible that you have exited 2020 with maybe a spiritual lackness where you are not focused and you're not giving attention? Maybe your oil might have run out and your focus has shifted to something else. You've allowed your eyes to watch something else instead of keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus. Luke chapter 21, Jesus says, "Watch out. Don't let your hearts be dulled by carousing and drunkenness and by the worries of this life. Don't let that day catch you unaware like a trap. For that day will come upon anyone living or everyone living on the earth. Keep alert at all times and pray that you might be strong enough to escape these coming horrors and stand before the Son of Man." In that passage, Jesus is talking about what will happen at the end. And like whenever there's something that we can't control that is happening, we tend to go to this idea that this might be the end of the world. Now, the simple truth is, none of us know when the end of the world will be. So, this might be the end of the world, but it might also not be the end of the world. You see, the point has never been when the end of the world will be. Rather, the point is this, that we should keep alert. And as we see signs around us of things shifting and changing, we should be watchful. We should keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. But we also should pay close attention to what is happening around us, like a guard watching out to see what is happening. Keep alert at all times and pray that you might be strong enough to escape those coming horrors and stand before the Son of Man. I want to encourage you as we enter into this new year to have this thought engraved in your heart that says, it is time. These are important times. These are critical times. These are times in which we should be alert. We should pay attention. Second point that I want to make is watch and pray. Watch and pray. You see, just watching is not enough. If we are not able to link our watching to prayer, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. See, we can look at something and we can make an analysis of what is happening, but unless we are able to take that to God and to have Him speak to us about it and have us speak to Him about it, we will have no clarity as to what we are seeing. We will have no direction. We will have no understanding. But if we are able to watch and pray, take it to God in prayer, He will be able to direct us and to lead us and to help us. And even if you are seeing something negative, take that to God in prayer. That which you have seen, take it to God in prayer. That which you have heard, take it to God in prayer. Allow Him to speak to you, to bring correction if it is necessary, to guide you and to direct you. In the book of Nehemiah, we read the incredible story of how Nehemiah is going back to Jerusalem and he's rebuilding the city walls. He's setting up the protection. And as these walls are rising, the enemies around begin to see that this wall is going up. They thought it would be a fool's errand and they would never get the job done, but now the wall is rising. And if they allow this wall to be completed, the city would be protected. They would lose their hold on that city. And as this is beginning to happen, the enemy see they've got to do something. And they begin to interfere and intimidate and attack to stop this building and the progress of this wall. In Nehemiah 4 verse 9, what is their response? They said, "But we prayed to our God, and we posted a guard day and night to meet this threat." You see, they did two things. They watched, they set up a guard, someone who could keep watch to make sure that when the enemy is approaching, they could warn the other people and they could direct the forces to send them back to that area. They watched. But equally important, they prayed. But we prayed to our God and we posted a guard day and night. I think we live in a day where we watch, we see, we make analysis, we gather information. But I also think we live in a day where we don't pray as we should. We don't take that information to God. We don't speak to Him about it. We don't allow Him to filter it and to direct it. In Matthew 26, Jesus is spending one of His last moments on earth praying. There's an event coming which is His crucifixion. He will be captured in a few hours. And He's busy praying. It's interesting that Jesus, who knows everything and understands everything, he has all the information. What does he do with that information? He takes that information to his Father in prayer. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing. But Jesus was not alone. He took some of his disciples with him, and he asked them to pray with him. What happened in verse 40? Then he returned to the disciples, and he found them asleep. And he said to Peter, "Couldn't you watch with me even for an hour?" He said, "Keep watch and pray, so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Now that word, keep watch, there literally means to stay awake. And the obvious is, if I am not awake, if the guard falls asleep, you won't see the danger approaching. But if the guard stays awake, if he stays vigilant, if he does his rounds, you will see danger approaching. Keep watch and pray. Again, I think this is a crucial word for this year, that we should keep watch and pray. Lastly, I want to shift the focus outward for a moment. We've looked at inward and protecting ourselves and what we should be doing in this year to position ourselves. We should watch and pray, and that would keep us safe. But in the Bible, we have a term that is the watchman. And just as there were watchmen set on the wall to see danger approaching the city, God sets watchmen spiritually to protect the nation of Israel. When we read in Ezekiel 3, one of these watchmen was Ezekiel. God says to him in verse 17, "Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel, to hear the word I speak and to give them warning from me." Now, we are certainly not Ezekiel, and we don't live in Israel. But there's a principle here that God introduces. And that is that He calls us as believers to be watchmen. We read in the book of Joel and later in the book of Acts that when God poured out His Spirit on everyone, sons and daughters, it says that they would all prophesy. We have this access to this ability to prophesy. So let me take a moment to just help you understand that. Because whenever I say prophet or prophesy, it sounds difficult and it sounds big. And there are some big and some difficult things attached to that. But I want to make it as simple as I possibly can. To prophesy simply means this. It means that I hear something and then I go and I speak that. And we find this incredible example. Remember Moses, the guy that God called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt? What was his excuse? He said, "I could not speak. I'm not able to speak." And eventually God says to him, "Okay, your brother is coming, Aaron. He will speak on your behalf." And this, as the story unfolds, we see this pattern. We see the pattern where Moses would hear from God, and then Aaron would speak that. We read this incredible thing. It says that Aaron was Moses' prophet. What does that simply mean? It meant that Aaron heard something from Moses and he simply said that. So at the most basic level, this is what prophecy is. Prophecy is hearing something from God and then speaking it. And I want to encourage you in this day and this age, in this time that is crucial, while we are watching and we are praying, that we should begin to understand that God has called us to be watchmen. People who have the ability to hear from God and to speak to those around us where we have influence. We've just journeyed through the Sermon on the Mount, and one of the passages from there talks about the fact that we should take the plank from our own eye, Matthew 7. And then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. When we look at that passage, it says we should not judge others. And so often the focus just stays there where we say, I'll rather say nothing. I'll rather keep quiet. But that's never God's intention. What God says is, take the things out of your own eye. In other words, fix what needs to be fixed in your own life. Take the issues of your own life to God and allow Him to speak into that and bring healing and restoration. But once He's done that, it says, once the plank has been removed, now you can clearly see the speck of dust in your brother's eye. And there is a place where we are called to stand up, to hear what God is saying and to speak that. I think one of the problems is that we are very eager to speak. We are not so eager to listen and to hear what God is saying. I want to encourage you. Those family members around you, those work colleagues, the spaces where God has placed you, that you should earnestly go before God this year. That you should understand that these times are critical. You should watch the times and be careful. Be awake, be alert. You should spend your time watching and praying. Thirdly, you should begin to speak when God speaks to you. Listen to what He says and then speak. In Hebrews 10, we are encouraged. It says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and of good works. Let us not neglect our meeting together as some do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of His return is drawing near. Let us think of ways that we can motivate each other, stir each other on to love and to good works and to faithfulness. Can I encourage you that you begin to see yourself as a watchman? Someone who can hear the Word of God and speak the Word of God. There's an important word here. Let us look for ways to motivate each other. Other translations would use the phrase encourage. And this is one of the keys when we begin to see ourselves as watchmen, that we should not be like the guy with the plank in his eye, just pointing finger and pointing out what is wrong, but rather we should be encouragers. In the New Testament, this is one of the key elements of New Testament prophecy, is that we encourage, we build up, we stir, we motivate. And if we speak words, they should be words that motivate others. Because I believe that is what God is saying in this day. Especially now. We're living in times where it is crucial to understand what is happening around us. So we need to watch. But we also need to pray and allow God to filter what we see. I'm going to close with this verse in Ephesians 6 verse 18. It says, pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all of the Lord's people. Can I encourage you as we are stepping into this year, that we would stand watch. We would pay attention to what we are looking at. More importantly, that we would take on this position of watchman. That would guard. Sometimes we don't even have to say something. Sometimes God will show you something in the life of a family member or a friend. And the purpose why He's showing you that is so that you could pray. Watch and pray. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all of the Lord's people. Let's pray together. Father, in these times that we are living in, we want to again just affirm that we are your children. We want to live for you. We want to follow you. We want to ask that you would help us. Guide us as we are stepping into this year. Help us to fix if we have wrong patterns of things that we watch and listen to. Help us to discern that. Holy Spirit, would you speak to us? Convict us. Help us to make the changes that are necessary. Father, as we are entering into this year, can we ask that your Spirit would draw us back to a place of prayer where we are watchful and mindful and we are alert so that we can pray. Help us to have good spiritual radar, to sense what is happening in the Spirit. Father, would you lead us through your Holy Spirit and guide our prayers. Father, I pray for everyone. For those who are prayer giants, we pray that you would continue to lead them to pray. For those who might be struggling in prayer or not sure how to do it, God, would you grab a hold of them and gently lead them into this place where they begin to grow in their prayer lives. Make us alert. Father, for everyone who has fallen asleep, I pray that you would wake them up. Keep them alert, keep them vigilant. Father, I pray for your protection and for your guidance. And as we stay close to you in this year, Father, we rely on you and we trust that you would lead us in this year. In Jesus' name. Amen. Pray that God would direct your eyes to His truth. May you see the beauty of who He is in His Word, and may that bring comfort to you. May He lead you with His loving eyes.